So often in life, we have moments where we wake up to a higher knowing, a higher level of awareness. And we have the feeling or the sense or the realization that we have wasted time. That in fact there was something before us and certainly something within us that was more than what we were present to, more than we were aware of, more than we saw, and more than we were able to receive. So how do we live a life that is an awakened life? How do we live a life where we know what we have, and we can also be in a place to expand our consciousness, expand what we have and what we can give, but not from a place of wasted time, not from a place of lack, not from a place of desperate wanting, but from a place of knowing internal and spiritual abundance. So often we can get to a place in life where time goes by and we realize we have enough, we have more than enough. And we look back at earlier years and earlier times and we say, I either thought I didn't have or I didn't have and it really mattered. And then sometimes we lose things, right? We lose things that we had in our younger years that we really didn't appreciate. And in our older years, we can spend time going, if I had what I had in my younger years. I didn't realize how valuable it was to be at the age where I was, where, not so many people that I knew were having this going on or that going on or this going on, or I didn't have this stress or that stress. How free I was. What a time that was. Prosperity and abundance is not in any way, shape, or form limited to money. And the spiritual exploration of it is an honorable one. Because really at the deep foundation of exploring prosperity principles is a healthy and whole desire to live a God-filled life, a life where you understand the grand overall design, where you're experiencing it, where you're living a life of goodness, a life of love, a life of wholeness, and where you feel that wholeness in the present moment. If it is true, the sacred text line that says, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's great pleasure to give you the kingdom." Fear not, little one. Fear not, one that has a sense of separation and isolation or separateness in any way. Fear not, young one. Fear not. For it is your source's great pleasure to give you the kingdom, to give you the queendom, to give you the realm of infinite possibilities, the realm of ideas, the realm of abundance. The sun shines on everyone. We've heard that saying. The sun shines on everyone. It doesn't restrain itself. It doesn't give some people more and some people less. It shines abundantly. So too, like nature, is this spiritual universe, because it's all one, it's all connected. So how can we consciously take on a practice and step out of ideas of not enough? Now, there's plenty of evidence, if anyone wants to live by the framework and the foundation and make an agreement with not enough. There will never be a lack if you want to have the mentality that life is not enough. There will never be a lack of evidence that you can justify that type of living. But there is a life on the other side of lack. There is a life on the other side of not enough. I was in discussion with a minister friend who shared a story that another shared with him that he said was a turning point and a change point in his life. And he said that this friend asked him, he said, "Have you decided what is enough for you? Have you decided what is enough for you?" He went on to say, "Until you define it, you will be in lack, always searching, always, waiting for someone who's selling something, who's going to give you something, who's going to fulfill that need, or waiting and trying to get that need filled. You'll always be waiting for tomorrow. You'll always be waiting until you can get. Until you know the answer to that question, have you decided what is enough for you? So have you taken that on? In any areas of our lives where we feel like there might be lack, have we really gotten focused to say, what is it that I'm really looking for? What is it that I really want, and what will make a difference? I tell people when they're working with depression, I say, rather than letting your mind always go to the, I'm depressed, just very general, broad, I'm depressed. Get specific. Because there's not much we can do with the spiritual practice to fill a void when it is so broad sweeping and so general. When it's so general, we're not making a vacuum, we're not visioning, we're not making a container that can be filled. I am so depressed is this very, very general, very, very hard to fill, hard to turn around, hard to transform energy. But if you can go one level deeper and say, what is it about you right now? What is it that feels like it's missing? What is it that feels like it's like, well, I'm lonely. I'm really lonely. Well, the mind and the substance around you can work with lonely. Lonely means it's time to start focusing on inner wholeness, and it's time to start developing meaningful relationships and connections. Lonely has a focus. It has something that can be shifted and filled. It's not so grandiose as there's just a mountain of stuff, right? It's like trying to get something done. Have you ever tried to just, go for your whole list at the same time? Nothing gets done. But if you can take 2 things in one day, 3 things in one day, right? And you just go, you know what? It was enough for today that I did that one thing. Get specific. But a lot of times we don't ask those questions. We don't ask ourselves, even in spiritual community, what is enough? Is it enough as we are? Or is it not enough? And what is missing? What is needed or what is wanted for it to be enough? We're often being pulled out of the power of a moment because we're focusing on what's missing and what's not enough. But we don't get specific enough to allow the space for the void to be filled. There's nothing wrong with looking at a moment and saying, something needs to shift here, with looking at our lives and saying something needs to shift here. Have we asked ourselves, what are we willing to commit to? What are we willing to look at? What are we willing to practice in order to transform those things, in order to shift, in order to elevate, in order to move to a different place? Have you asked yourself what prosperity really is to you, truly what it is? And is there a way to live and even grow or expand from a sense of satisfaction rather than a sense of lack? Is there a way to be pulled by a vision to grow rather than a pressure of dissatisfaction? Both are options. Both can lead to growth. One might be a little more pleasant. Is there an option of living our expansion from a place of spiritual abundance rather than longing, rather than recognizing that we've spent a lot of our time chasing and searching? That energy can sometimes consume us. It can sometimes direct our values and direct us into how we spend our time. And we can often wake up to realizing we didn't really align with those values. It wasn't really how we wanted to spend our time. That really in some specific places in our lives, we had enough, we had more than enough. We just didn't see it. We didn't recognize it at the right time. So there's a way to live. There's another option about being on purpose, waking up to conscious and intentional living, to see what we have, to value what we have, and to vision what we want, so that we can live by our values and value how we live. We can expand, but not out of lack. We can grow, but from our wholeness. We can develop, but develop out of our completeness. There is another path that doesn't have to do with always fixating on what's missing. So how do we get there? What do we do to get there? What are the steps? The first step is to get clear. To really get clear, to ask ourselves some of these questions, to define enough, to define prosperity for us, not to let it be defined by other people, not to fall to the ideas that prosperity is just materialism or consumerism or gluttony, that materialism is limited to objects. It's good to have objects in your life. It doesn't create a sense of freedom to be consumed by how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to get food on the table? When we vision and when we take the transformational path of shifting our thinking, shifting our actions, and leading a new life, we can grab our energy that is sometimes tied up and consumed in these problems, in getting basic needs met. And we can begin to get on to other things. We can begin to fulfill that soul desire or the feeling of a soul purpose on the planet. We can begin to be giving. Prosperity means different things to different people. If you don't define it for yourself, someone will define it for you, and you will unknowingly make an agreement with that definition. We are sold ideas left and right about what it means to have. And some of us that have so much feel like we don't have. You know that there's a very, 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 very rich person that feels like they don't have. And there is a very, 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 very poor person that knows they have more than enough. I received a text this week from a spiritual practitioner that was reading about prosperity, and he read this, and this was sent to me in the text. These are the words that came across regarding prosperity. What is it? What is prosperity when it really comes down to it? Prosperity means different things to different people. For the poor, it might mean having money. For the weak, it might mean being strong and in control. For the lonely, it might mean having someone to love and be loved by. For the sick, it might mean feeling healthy. For the confused, it might mean feeling grounded, centered, and surrounded by friends. We have perceived lack, and we have ideas of abundance. It's a relative concept. So it's one to explore. It's one to turn around and to shift our consciousness, to shift our minds, and to get really clear when we find ourselves consumed with the ideas of lack or having conversations around lack. Get really clear so we can start turning them around. So that we can start filling the parts of our lives with that which we find to be lavish. One of my favorite definitions of prosperity is always that when you have the desire, when you have the need, the knowing, that the source appears. Can we live like this? Can we shift our definition of prosperity so that we can begin to live in the flow of life, to stop waiting for something to happen to us and start moving from what is happening within us and let that have our focus? If you couldn't hear that, there was a huge radiant thunder. It's a subtle difference, friends. When we look at what prosperity means to us, what it truly means to us, when we ask ourselves the question, is enough enough? When is enough enough? What is enough? It's not that we're letting go of visioning. It's not that we're saying we don't want more. It's not that we are saying these principles, forget them, I'm not going to work with them, or I'm fine with everything being like this forever. We're making a shift to live from abundance rather than to spend time living in the wanting. And how do you want to feel on your last day? I had the honor this week of doing multiple memorials, multiple scatterings, and supporting beloved families in that. You know, and you stand there with ashes in your hands, knowing that it is so real, that this life is not forever in this physical form. Knowing that each moment we wake up and stop wasting our time on the little things that are completely unimportant, that there is a whole chorus, a whole universe, a whole troop of angels just singing, she's got it, he's got it, they've got it. What are we willing to live from? The truth of our wholeness, the truth of our abundance? Do you believe that you can feel prosperous, blessed, and like you're living a life of abundance in the middle of healing from a diagnosis? We have absolute evidence in front of us and among us that you can. That you can, in fact, feel more prosperous than you've ever felt in your life. That you can possibly have something that's a deep, deep, deep heartfelt desire, that you keep having human heartbreak over human heartbreak over human heartbreak around it, but you can be so aware of the lavish abundance in your life that even in the midst of that, you're not living from lack. This is living the prosperity principles. This is our divine birthright. This is what is available and accessible to everyone, and this is the birthplace of true lavish abundance. Eric Butterworth, in his book, Spiritual Economics, shares with us this affirmation treatment. So I invite you to take a deep breath. I am secure, for I know who I am, a richly endowed child of God. I am secure in all I do, for I know my oneness with the divine process. I am secure in all I have, for I know my treasure is in my mind, not in my things. I live my life from day to day as if God's supportive substance were as exhaustless and dependable as the air I breathe, which it most certainly is. I'll read those words again, and we'll let them just go to the core of our being from center to circumference. I am secure, for I know who I am. Together, I am secure, for I know who I am. A richly endowed child of God. A richly endowed child of God. I am secure in all I do, for I know my oneness with the divine process. I am secure in all I have, for I know my treasure is in my mind, not in my things. I live my life from day to day as if God's supportive substance were as exhaustless and dependable as the air I breathe, which it most certainly is. Namaste.